Hello and welcome. Welcome to our next NAP. NAP stands for Nonprofit Auditors Point. My name is Irina Orshkova and I'm your nonprofit auditor. Welcome once again. And today I want to continue our series about what auditors looking for when they testing various accounts. Today I want to talk about going concern. It's a word that most likely your nonprofit never use internally in their discussion, but we use it as auditors when we see there is a risk flags or risk areas that within nonprofit that indicate that nonprofit might not continue its operations for the next 12 months. It's pretty serious concern, meaning that the concern we have as the auditors that organization will not be able to sustain its operations. It's called going concern. So what do we do as the auditors? And what are red flags we see as the auditors that might indicate such concern? The areas, first and foremost, if we see that the organization has financial losses, meaning overall revenue for the year is less than expenses, and it happens year after year. Again, we concern how much losses and how much of net assets or reserve left after absorbing these expenses, these losses. So if we identify there is a potentially not sufficient enough net assets exists to absorb same type of liability and expenses as in previous years, it might indicate going concern. Once again, we see annual losses, especially if they repeat losses. We also see if the organization has challenges to make its accounts paid on time. So it accumulates invoices, manages invoices, what to pay, what not to pay. Also, sometimes nonprofit has challenges to make a payroll, and not because of the liquidity. It looks like money is there, but they are restricted for some other purpose. So for example, if nonprofit has expense reimbursement grant, but they only allow 10% or less for overhead, so nonprofit has a difficulties to pay their admin staff. So liquidity issue. It could be liquidity issue. It could be overall problem with the generating revenue. Maybe nonprofit lost a large donor, and right now everything looks fine, but there is a large donor is gone, so it could be indication of going concern. Additionally, if nonprofit had some debt which has a balloon payment at the end and the payment is coming due and the organization does not have sufficient cash to pay the outstanding debt, it might also indicate going concern issue. Sometimes it could be operational flags. If we see as the auditors that nonprofits closing facilities, firing people, or starting some operations, maybe new operations that bleeding money, and even though it's a great idea of that new line of business, but it's actually not financially supported. But the organization is believing they somehow will be able to recoup the expenses. So all of these are going concerns issue. So if we as the auditors see either operational flags or financial flags, we have to, if they're quite substantial, we have to disclose it right on the opinion that there is organization going concern. It does not look good. It's very dangerous because donors will see that nonprofit might not even survive next 12 months. So what organization can do if there is a potential going concern issue? First of all, the organization has to face it and say, okay, we do have challenges. What can we do in order to mitigate that risk and make sure that we sustain our operation at least next 12 months? So, and the solutions might be emotional and challenging, but at the end of the day, I do believe that nonprofit have to look not only in the great work that they do as a mission, but also as a business. Because if the nonprofit will not be able to survive, mission will be gone. So it's better to cut some areas, but at least sustain its operations and hopefully in future again grow. So very common areas where nonprofit can find the solution will be, first of all, cut the expenses, control the expenses, see what your largest expenses and which ones can be eliminated or decreased. Typically, that might be supplies. Maybe organization had some special events. They're very dear to the heart, and they had them for the last 50 years, but special events actually do not bring money. They are very expensive, time consuming for this stuff. So the organization, maybe it's a good idea to do the special events, to stop doing special events for a couple of years. Other areas where nonprofits can find the solution is to find extra financing. But be careful. We've seen a couple nonprofits that go for risky financing, getting some debt or loans that allow lender to request funds to be paid immediately. That can bring the organization down very quickly. So get some finances that are reasonable and the organization will be able to sustain and afford. Maybe talk to the board members and see if they can either provide contacts with the lenders that give the good rates for nonprofits, or even connect them with the funders who would be interested in the mission of their nonprofit. So another thing that nonprofits can do is to scale down. They might close some locations that are not profitable, even might sell the buildings if there's extra building, or any ways to find liquidity. But the word of warning, make sure that it's not just temporary solution, but that's actually the solution that will help organization to break even and become sustainable. The idea is not to get temporary cash and eat it and again be in the same situation. So the solutions needs to be that they will allow nonprofit to become sustainable and at least break even, meaning make sure that the amount of revenue will at least cover expenses that necessary to run the business. Again, sometimes it's very hard to cut the program expenses, but if the organization need to decrease its operations in order to become sustainable, the organization has to do it. Very often, bookkeepers see the signs of financial troubles of nonprofits before even operations do. Because in operations, on the service, you can see nonprofit is doing fine, it might even grow. But as a bookkeeper or finance department, you will see that there is not enough money. You bookkeeper, you're struggling to make payroll, you're struggling to pay invoices. And that's where the role as bookkeeper is, to bring that issues to executive director, to the board of directors, and say, maybe we don't collect our receivable fast, or we cannot afford the services that we provide because it requires a lot of time of our staff, it's very expensive, but our revenue does not cover all of that expense. So actually board of directors and executive director can put their heads together and come up with a model that will again allow nonprofit to at least break even. So in this role of good bookkeeper is to keep your team informed if there is a cash liquidity issue, or if you see that there's issues coming in. So you see that cash declining, you see that sometimes you're just really struggling with the timing. You know the cash will come, but right now there is no cash. So, and if you can see it getting worse, you need to bring it up to the management. So reconciliations reports, like bank reconciliations, even accounts receivable reconciliation, would be a good support for bookkeeper to show to the finance team, to the even finance committee or board of directors, executive director, see where we are. So, and then if such situation exists and bookkeeper communicated and board of directors realized that, thought about it, maybe came up with a plan, that plan needs to be communicated to the auditor, and a plan needs to be how we can get out of the place where we are. The auditor is supposed to see if it's a realistic plan, and then the auditor can decide to put it in the face of the report, or just footnote disclosure, or even just document it in the work papers and not put it in the face of the report. So auditor will exercise professional judgment to see how serious the problem is, but it's a job of nonprofit to explain to the auditor what their plan, what they're gonna do, and how they're planning to get themselves more sustainable. Again, hopefully your nonprofit will never be in a situation that there is a potential going concern issue, but we do live in unpredictable times and everything possible. On a happier note, we've seen nonprofits who went through very little with liquidity problems to pretty large, good nonprofit entity. So it's all possible, it's all manageable, and it's all up to nonprofit. Make sure to treat its business as a business. At the end, sustainability of nonprofit is very critical for the health and benefits of your members, of the mission of the organization. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with me. I'm looking forward to see you for the next snap. Have a wonderful day and be safe.